Welcome to D&D Builds, where we have an outlet to make all sorts of ridiculous Dungeons & Dragons characters and stop driving the people in our lives insane with them. Today we're going to be building Ichigo Kurosaki from BLEACH. I've been a huge fan of BLEACH for a long time. The character designs and abilities are just awesome, and especially Ichigo. He's got so many cool abilities. Between the different forms of him and his sword and everything else that goes on in the show, we need to try and make sure we cover all of it. And on the subject of creating characters and especially focusing on crazy abilities within games, I know of a way you can dive into it even deeper because this video is sponsored by Southern New Hampshire University. They wanted to support creators like me to help spread the word that they have courses about creating characters, at least in game development or in fiction writing. I know plenty of dungeon masters and players that essentially wrote their entire character's backstory and went way more in depth than they ever needed to. And Southern New Hampshire University does have degrees and classes all about fiction writing. And if you want to go on more of the game related aspect, they have degrees and courses on game development and programming. Or if you're a little more artistically inclined, they also have programs for graphic design, media arts, and additional game art and development courses. Whether you just want to check out a couple classes or if you want a full-blown degree, they offer either of them, and you can do online or in person. And this is actually a way that you can help support this channel and all of the D&D related content that I make, because just for going and checking it out and requesting some more information on any classes you might be interested in or a degree that you're thinking about, SNHU will support this channel even more. All you have to do is check out the link in the description and request some more information. Who knows, you may even find yourself diving into a subject you never even considered. With over 200 programs and degrees, I'm sure you'll find something you'll be interested in. Or maybe you'll just be making all sorts of ridiculous characters like I always do. So let's go ahead and dive into building this character. First things first, we gotta pick a race. And I was actually super tempted to dive into the plane shift material and grab Aetherborn because it's an entire race about being formed of psychic energy, and that feels like it could very much align to more spiritual pressure type of energy. But since it's not technically official, I'm going to lean slightly against it, even though that was actually my first choice. So instead, you're kind of a substitute part of the Soul Society, and as a substitute Soul Reaper in your general dealings with the in-betweens of death and life, we're going to go with Reborn. The whole idea of this race is that death isn't always the end, and it's for individuals who have died yet somehow are still alive, and the whole vagueness kind of just fits. This has a few interesting features, but the most important ones are Ancestral Legacy, where you can regain some skills from whatever your original life was. But we're just going to take the default on this and just grab the proficiency in 2 skills that you can choose, grabbing Perception and Investigation, because you're able to really perceive the world around you, and Ichigo's very adept at that, even if he doesn't always understand what it means all the time. And then the other key feature of being a Reborn is that you get Deathless Nature, making it so you don't need to eat, drink, or breathe in your soul form. You don't need sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. You can finish a long rest in 4 hours. You have advantage on saving throws against disease and being poisoned, and you have resistance to poison damage. And then, of course, as an anime protagonist, you have advantage on death saving throws, so that way you're a little harder to kill. And the very last thing you get is a language to choose from, and because you're constantly dealing with hollows, to me that kind of feels like abyssal, so we're just going to go with that. Then when it comes to a background, you are a substitute Soul Reaper. You kind of align yourself with that, so we're going to go with Knight of the Order. As part of this background, you swear an oath to achieve certain goals, and that kind of feels like Ichigo. It also gives you skill proficiencies in Persuasion, and you get to choose one other, and we're going to go with Arcana, because even though Ichigo isn't really aware of the ins and outs and intricacies of spiritual pressure, or in this case, Arcana or magic, he does still know how to use it and sense it to some degree, so we're just going to give him proficiency in it with Arcana. Then you get to choose one more language, and if Abyssal wasn't close enough to being a hollow type of language, we'll grab Infernal as well. Now let's go ahead and dive into some stats. When it comes to strength, we're not really focused on Ichigo's physical form, so we're going to go ahead and dump strength, but he does still need to be able to react very quickly, so we're going to go ahead and boost our dexterity, bumping it all the way to 15, and then we'll get another +1 from the Reborn race, where you can put 1 point into 3 different skills. Ichigo's also very hard to kill for the most part, so we'll take our Constitution, also bump it to 15, and then get another +1 from our Reborn race. Then we're going to take our Intelligence and our Wisdom and dump both of them, because Ichigo seems to constantly be behind everybody else when it comes to his knowledge about what's going on. And even in the very beginning of the show and the manga, it seems like absolutely everybody else understands spiritual pressure and he just like, what the heck is going on? And then finally, he's an anime protagonist. We're gonna go ahead and boost up his charisma because some people love him, some people hate him, but either way, he's definitely the leader of the pack. And when it comes to drawing out your own spiritual energy, having control over your own inner power is kind of much more leaning towards charisma, at least in D&D terms. And with all of that charisma, it should probably be no surprise that when it comes to a starting class, we're going to be leaning towards Warlock. When you choose Warlock at first level, you get proficiency in light armor and simple weapons. Granted, the giant sword that he gets from Rukia at the beginning, and later he develops his own swords, would definitely be beyond simple weapons, but we'll address that shortly. You also get saving throws in wisdom and charisma, and then finally get to choose 2 skills. So we'll grab intimidation for those moments where you're just scary as hell to your opponents, and follow it up with deception just so you can hide your true intentions from whoever you need to. Also at first level, you get to choose an otherworldly patron, and whether you're treating it as Rukia for helping you out at the very beginning, or you really getting in touch with the sword you have access to, we gotta go with a Hexblade. This otherworldly patron is really going to allow us to focus on the sword skills that Ichigo develops. It gives us access to medium armor, shields, and martial weapons. And that's going to be pretty helpful because otherwise you wouldn't be very proficient at swinging the enormous sword that you get from initially helping Rukia. And speaking of that giant sword, how are you going to wield it without strength? Well, the other benefit of being a Hexblade is that you can now use your charisma for the attack and damage rolls, really focusing on using the power of your soul instead of physical strength. Additionally, at first level of being a Hexblade, you get the Hexblade feature, Hexblade's Curse. So once per short or long rest, you can curse a target, and whenever you hit that target, you gain bonus damage to rolls against the cursed target equal to your proficiency bonus. And any attack roll you make against that cursed target, when you roll that d20, it's a crit on a 19 or a 20, essentially doubling your crit range. And then finally, if the cursed target dies, you regain hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your charisma modifier. And finally, the last thing you get as being a first level of Warlock is some magic, but more specifically Pact magic, which happens to work slightly differently than other magic that's used by other classes. At this level, you get to know 2 cantrips and 2 spells, but we really want to focus on the sword fighting ability. So for the cantrips, we're going to go ahead and grab Booming Blade, allowing you to really smash down with your sword, and then we're going to follow it up with Sword Burst, allowing you to swing your sword all around you all at once. And then when it comes to the spells, we get some additional spell choices by being a Hexblade, and they help us focus on that sword fighting ability. So we're going to grab Shield so you can block a little better, and we're going to go ahead and grab Wrathful Smite, allowing you to use a bonus action to deal psychic damage with your next sword strike as an action. And on top of that, it also forces them to make a wisdom saving throw, and if they fail, they're frightened. Then at second level of Warlock, you can choose 2 Eldritch Invocations to really boost up your general abilities. So we're going to go ahead and grab Armor of Shadows because we don't really see Ichigo actually wearing any real armor. It's more that loose cloth style. So this allows us to catch Mage Armor at will, allowing us to have some actual defensive abilities to not get hit all the time. And then we're going to follow it up with Eldritch Sight, which allows you to cast Detect Magic at will. And this is just going to be a better way so you can detect spiritual pressure. Additionally, at this level, you get to learn 1 more spell, but we're going to save it for next level because at 3rd level of Warlock, you get to learn 1 more spell on top of that, and the power of your casting gets upgraded, so all of the spells that you cast are now going to be at 2nd level. But before we even grab those spells, you also get a Pact boon. And since you're already so aligned with your sword, let's dive into the soul of that sword and really bring it to another level with Pact of the Blade. This is where you finally get your very own Zanpakuto, and we're going to boost up your overall combat abilities with the Hexblade spell Blur, so you're really hard to hit. And then we're not just going to stop with the basic form of your Zanpakuto, we need to crank it up a level so you can achieve the next form of your sword, grabbing the spell Shadow Blade, creating a sword of solidified gloom in your hand that deals 2d8 psychic damage on a hit. This only costs a bonus action to cast, and if you for some reason drop your sword, you can just use another bonus action to summon it back to your hand, almost like it's attached by a chain. king. Then at 4th level of Warlock, you get an ability score improvement, so we're going to go ahead and boost up our charisma, which boosts pretty much all of your abilities, and then you get to learn one more spell. And I was tempted to grab Misty Step for the flash step ability that you have, especially if you activated your Bankai. But I have an idea in mind for the future for how to get that ability, so instead we're going to grab Branding Smite from the Hexblade spell list. And lastly, at this level you get one more cantrip, so to deal with a purely defensive stance with your sword, we're going to grab Blade Ward. Then at 5th level of Warlock, your spell slots get upgraded to 3rd level and you get another spell, and this is where we're actually going to get a small piece of your hollow form. We're going to grab the spell Spirit Shroud. This allows you to call for spirits of the dead that flit around you, but in this case forming a partial mask on you, and now any attack that you make deals an extra 1d8 damage. And on top of that, when you hit a creature with an attack, that creature can't regain hit points until the start of your next turn. And lastly, any creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of you has its speed reduced by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. Almost like your power is amplified, so you're able to keep up with others a bit more. Then lastly, at this level you get another invocation, so we're going to grab Thirsting Blade, allowing you to attack twice instead of once with your sword. And now that we have an extra attack, it's time for us to jump into a multi-class. But if you have any trouble following along with any of this build, you can always check out my Patreon linked in the description down below, like these incredible people, or the especially awesome Biscuit Gaming, Salvador, or Kalon. And even going above and beyond that, there's my Dungeon Master level patrons, Devin Happy, Benjamin, Tristan Bennett, GameStake, and Heyo. They get additional perks including having D&D sessions hosted by me that I stream right here on YouTube as well as over on Twitch. And then finally, above all of that, there's my God tier level patron, Kilo, who just I cannot thank this guy enough. I try to give him additional insights and any perks I can possibly think of, but frankly, I just feel like it's never enough for a God tier level patron. But now let's jump back into the build. For this multi-class, I was definitely tempted to grab something like a Death Cleric, just because they have the feature Reaper, and as a Soul Reaper that just kind of fits as far as the name, but the actual abilities don't really fit, plus we don't have the wisdom to do that multi-class. So instead, we're going to jump over to Fighter, because with that multi-class, I want to focus on that flash step ability and just really amp up Ichigo's overall speed and a unique way of doing attacks. At level 1 of Fighter, you get a fighting style, and I was thinking about leaning towards great weapon fighting, because despite the name, all you have to do is be wielding a weapon with 2 hands, and whether Ichigo's using his massive sword or his much more leaned out sword, in both cases he's usually wielding it with both hands, so we could definitely use this, but really it only makes it so you can take any damage dice that would have rolled a 1 or a 2 and re-roll them, which can help, but frankly, I think it's a little more helpful just to get the very basic defense, which boosts your overall armor class by 1 point. It is a little more boring, but in my opinion, it can be much more useful. Also at this level, you get Second Wind, allowing you to regain some hit points equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level as a bonus action. Just like in every anime, when you get really beat down, that doesn't mean you're out, so you can fight on through the pain and come on back to win. Then at 2nd level of Fighter, you get Action Surge. So now when you attack twice with your Zanpakuto in any form that it exists, you can now attack 4 times. Or if you're using something like a cantrip, you can use 2 cantrips, possibly casting Booming Blade or Sword Burst twice, or you can always use one of your actions for an actual spell if you want to. Then at 3rd level of Fighter, you get to choose a Martial Archetype, otherwise known as a Fighter subclass. And while I was tempted to grab something like Battle Master, giving you some battle maneuvers to use, or Samurai due to the overall style of the Soul Reapers themselves, I really wanted to lean into the Flash step, and I figured out a good way to do that using the Echo Knight. As soon as you choose this subclass at 3rd level, you get Manifest Echo, creating an echo of yourself somewhere within 30 feet of you. Just like when Ichigo's moving so fast, it's almost like you're seeing multiples of it. This will allow you to teleport to that echo's spot as a bonus action, even though it still costs you 15 feet of movement either way, giving you some access to something similar to Flash Step. And when you do any attacks on your turn, it can either originate from your spot or your echo's spot. So it's like attacking somebody from all sides just because you're moving so fast. And one other feature of this Echo is that you can actually make opportunity attacks from your spot or your Echo's spot. So you can get super tactical with it. And the other feature you get from this subclass is Unleash Incarnation. So now anytime you take the attack action, you can make 1 more melee attack from the Echo's position. You can only use this as many times as your Constitution modifier, but between that and your Action Surge, now just for normal attacks, you can deal 6 attacks in a single round. Now that we've sorted out some sort of Flash Step ability and mixed it up a little bit, we're going to actually jump back over to Warlock. And at 6th level of Warlock, you get another feature from being a Hexblade, a Cursed Spectre. So when you slay an enemy, you can bind their soul to you. As a Soul Reaper, this does seem thematic. While there are some unique features from this Accursed Spectre, we can really just think of it as the soul of your sword itself, which you pretty regularly encounter throughout the anime and manga series. Additionally, at this level, you get to learn one more spell, so we're going to hammer on that Flash Step ability a tiny bit more with Thunder Step. Then at 7th level of Warlock, you get to learn one more spell that can now be up to a 4th level spell slot. So from the Hexblade spell list, we're going to go ahead and grab Staggering Smite, dealing some additional psychic damage, and possibly forcing disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks for your enemy. Additionally, at this level, you get one more Eldritch Invocation, so just to add to all of the smites we already have, now we can grab another one, Eldritch Smite, which you don't have to use a bonus action to engage. Just when you hit somebody and you hit really freaking hard, you can add 1d8 force damage to the target, plus another 1d8 per level of the spell slot used. And if you wait till you crit, which you can crit on a 19 or a 20 if it's cursed by your Hexblade, this can do a serious amount of damage, and then just on top of that, you can also knock the target prone if it's huge or smaller. Then at 8th level of Warlock, you get another ability score improvement, so we're finally going to max out our charisma so you can hit as hard as you possibly want to, and you can learn one more spell. But we're actually going to save that spell for next level, because at 9th level of Warlock, you get one more spell on top of it, and your spell slots get upgraded to 5th level. So we're really going to be flashed up and all over the place with the spell Far Step, which essentially allows us to cast Misty Step over and over again. And we're going to be able to hit so freaking hard and banish any hollows that make their way into the mortal realm with Banishing Smite. The one other thing you get from this level is you get one more Eldritch Invocation. So we're going to grab the Invocation Improved Pact Weapon. This makes it so all of your Pact Weapon attacks have a +1 by default, which can make a world of difference in D&D. And you can even choose a new form for your weapon if you really want to, which can be a short bow, long bow, light crossbow, or heavy crossbow, in case you want to go a bit more Quincy style. Then at 10th level, you get another cantrip, so we're going to do a bit of blasting, activating our Getsuga Tensho, and get Eldritch Blast. Additionally, at this level, you get the feature from being a Hexblade, Armor of Hexes. So if somebody's cursed by your Hexblade's curse, and they try and hit you with any attack roll, even if they crit or anything, you can use your reaction to roll a d6. And if you roll a 4 or higher, that just misses you, no matter what the roll is. So even if you're going up against Aizen or whoever, and they come at you with the biggest attack in the world, you have a 50-50 chance to just say, nope, didn't hit me. Then at 11th level of Warlock, you get a Mystic Arcanum, which is a kind of special spell which can now be at 6th level, but you don't get to cast it the same way you cast the rest of your Warlock spells. So we're going to go ahead and grab that full-on hollow form with Tasha's Otherworldly Guise, allowing you to draw energy from a completely different plane of existence and transform yourself. You can gain immunity to either fire and poison damage or radiant and necrotic damage, and you are either immune to the poison condition or the charmed condition. On top of that, you get spectral wings, giving you a flying speed of 40 feet, and you get a bonus +2 to your armor class. The last benefits are that you can use your spellcasting ability modifier instead of your strength or dexterity for weapon attacks, but you can already do that, and you can attack twice instead of once, but you can already do that as well. So those last two features don't matter too much for this spell, but it is a very good way to transform yourself and become a full-blown hollow form. Then at 12th level of Warlock, you get another ability score improvement, so we're going to make you a little harder to hit, boosting up your dexterity by 2 points, and you get to learn another invocation. So we're going to grab the invocation Life Drinker. So now when you attack with your sword, you can deal even more damage by adding your charisma modifier again, making it so that way with every single attack, you're dealing an additional +11 damage, which is massive in D&D. And you can amp that damage up even further with your Hexblade Curse, allowing you to add your proficiency bonus to that damage, just making it a little extra absurd. We could amp this up even more with a Great Weapon Master feat, making it +21 damage, but frankly, we don't really need that, and you don't always use your great weapon to attack, especially if you're using the Shadow Blade form or anything else. Then at 13th level of Warlock, you get another Mystic Arcanum that can be up to a 7th level Warlock spell. And when you're in your hollow form, you have those crazy horns that you can sometimes do crazy blasts out of. So to make sure we can replicate that, we're gonna grab the spell Crown of Stars, allowing you to do some just generally crazy blasts right out of your head. Then at 14th level of Warlock, you get another feature for being a Hexblade, Master of Hexes. So now you don't have to be quite as worried about when you're going to use your Hexblade's Curse, because if the target of your Hexblade's Curse dies, you can immediately apply that curse to somebody else, because it's not always going to be a one-on-one fight, even if it does seem that the most epic battles in Bleach do seem to go that way. Then at 15th level of Warlock, you get another Mystic Arcanum that can be up to an 8th level spell. And I love those moments when Ichigo lets out his hollow form and lets out that horrific scream. So we're going to grab the spell Power Word Stun, just completely stopping your enemies in their tracks in pure utter fear. You also get another invocation at this level, so I want to make sure that Ichigo doesn't completely lose his mind when he's dealing with his hollow form, or at least he's able to maintain concentration on spells a little better and grab Eldritch Mind, giving you advantage on Constitution saving throws to maintain your concentration on spells. And then at 16th level of Warlock, you get another ability score improvement. We already have a decent amount of AC, so we're going to boost up our Constitution by 2 points, which helps our concentration saving throws and our extra attacks we get with our Echo Knight. Then finally at 17th level of Warlock and the last level of this build, bringing us to 20th level overall, you get one more Mystic Arcanum, which can be all the way up to a 9th level. And this is where you get the pure ultimate form of your sword with Blade of Disaster. Technically, you don't actually have to be holding on to the blade, it can float on its own, but thematically we could use it however the hell we want. On a hit, the target takes 4d12 force damage, and it scores a crit on an 18 or higher, which is even better than your Hexblade's Curse. And if you do crit, the blade deals an extra 8d12 force damage for a total of 12d12 force damage, which you can actually deal 2 times just as your bonus action. So if you have this active, along with your Hexblade's Curse, and you use your Action Surge to attack 4 times with your actual actions, you're dealing 4d12 2 times as a bonus action, and then you can attack twice with your Zanpakuto, which, if it's in its greatsword form, will deal 2d6 damage, plus your Charisma modifier for the basic attack, plus your Life Drinker, which you can add your Charisma again, plus your +1 for your improved packed weapon, and we can add our Eldritch Smite to one of those attacks. I would save it for a crit, but either way, you're still doing at least 6d8 damage. On top of all of that, you get 2 more attacks with your Echo Knight as you're flash stepping around, which you still get to add your Charisma modifier twice to, along with the +1 from your improved packed weapon. And don't forget that you're getting an additional +6 damage to every single hit that you do thanks to your Hexblade's Curse, adding your proficiency bonus to the damage. So in total, you're dealing 8d12 from your 2 Blade of Disaster attacks as your bonus action. Then you get to add your normal attacks, which are 2d6 damage if you're using a greatsword, plus 11 damage between your normal Charisma you get to add as a Hexblade, the Charisma you get to add again, having your Life Drinker invocation, plus your improved packed weapon for an additional +1, and you can do that attack 6 times, twice as your normal attack action, plus you can add in your Echo Knight, and you can double those 3 attacks, making it 6 attacks with your Action Surge. And then just to boost that up again, you can burn one of your spell slots to boost it up once per turn, dealing an extra 68 damage for an Eldritch Smite. Finally, to top it all off, you can add your proficiency bonus of +6 to the damage of all 8 of the attacks between your normal attacks, your Echo Knight, your Action Surge, and your Blade of Disaster attacks, bringing the maximum amount of damage that you can roll in a single turn to a pretty considerable 330 damage, which is an absolutely staggering amount of damage, and that's not even factoring in any crits of any kind when you have a significantly improved chance to crit on every one of these strikes. You could even amp this up even further by grabbing the feat Great Weapon Master, adding +10 to 6 of those attacks as far as your damage, but you don't really need the extra 60 damage if you really don't want it. And it will make you slightly more limited as to which form of your Zanpakuto that you want to use. But then again, what did you expect? Bleach has some insane power scaling, and not to mention, you're an anime protagonist. You're gonna be insanely overpowered. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below. I really enjoy focusing more on the melee combat, even as a warlock. It's just so much fun. And if there's any other builds you want in the future, let me know in the comments as well, which is how I wind up with half of these builds anyways. Don't forget to check out my Patreon if you want the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds. And finally, let me know that you made it all the way to the end of this video by hitting that like button and I'll be here helping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to play as a substitute Soul Reaper, Ichigo Kurosaki from BLEACH.